Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, JavaScript Supply Chain Security. My name is Danielle Wombold, and I'll be your moderator. I work on the marketing team here at NPM, and I'm excited to be hosting today's session. I'm pleased to introduce today's NPM speaker, Adam Baldwin, VP of Security. Before I hand it over to Adam, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about the presentation in the BrightTalk webinar platform. First, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session and is accessible through the same link you're using now. We've also added you will be able to slides as well as related content, including NPM's latest blog on the same subject as we're talking about today. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question for Adam, please feel free to send it through the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of your player. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session, but feel free to submit your questions at any time. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we will sure to follow up with you afterwards. Now over to Adam.
Thanks, Danielle. All right, JavaScript Supply Chain Security. As mentioned, I'm Adam. I'm the VP of Security at NPM. Most people know NPM from the CLI, right? It's the tool that developers interact with that lets them discover and manage their code reuse. It gets packages from the public registry, the world's largest corpus of open source packages, over 1 million packages, 2 billion downloads a day, and almost 8,000 publishes a day. It's growing and being updated at a very quick pace. Of course, NPM is also made up of the website, right? The platform where developers go to perform searches and find new packages to solve the new business need that they have. And all of it is backed by NPM Inc., the company that's delivering enterprise products and solutions to help organizations manage their modern development. That's about NPM. Let's talk about today's presentation. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk about what is a supply chain attack. We're going to talk and discuss a case study of a recently discovered malware, targeted malware against the Komodo platform, in which the NPM team helped protect an estimated 13 million in cryptocurrency. We're going to discuss some steps that NPM is taking to protect you and the steps that you can take to be protected. And then we'll answer any questions that you have. As Danielle mentioned, feel free to submit them anytime during the presentation. We'll do our best to get them at the end. So what is a supply chain attack, right? A supply chain attack for software is about abusing the process in which software is created, introducing new components, gaining access to manipulate existing dependencies that the application has, or one of the trusted systems along that build chain. For a successful supply chain attack, an attacker must gain access to manipulate the underlying dependency, right? If they can change or get access to an account that has a dependency that one of your applications use, they can bring in a malicious component. They could introduce a new component to the build process, usually through social engineering. Oh, here's a pull request. Here's a new component. Use this, and then they later introduce it as a malicious component. They also must build trust, right, through social engineering, through their contributions and their history. These fake accounts, these attackers, they have to build a good legend, right? And sometimes it's just luck. They put out this malware through packages that are named something similar. They put it out there into the ecosystem and hope that it gets used. These are things that we've seen, and we'll talk about those a little bit as we go further here. So if you think about a supply chain, think about the meal that shows up on your table, right? It's got many different components. It's got many different things that make it so it can be successful and edible and delicious, right? And many different people, and you can impact any one of those, and that meal might not be as successful, or you can still do everything you can, but you still might get E. coli on something, right? So it's about a process, getting things from the farm to your table, and that's similar to the supply chain attack. If you can impact one of those things along the way, you can impact that experience, right? So that meal is kind of like your final app that's coming together in production, right? And why is NPM so much of an interesting target when it comes to supply chain attacks or any other ecosystem that has third-party dependencies, it's because, well, your app is made up of many different dependencies, right? And these dependencies themselves have many other dependencies, and each one of these dependencies is maintained by a person. And since roughly 97%, that's probably being generous, of the code in a modern web application comes from NPM, the majority of the code that you're shipping to production is not maintained or manufactured by your developers. It's by somebody else, right? There's a lot of attack surface when it comes to these small module type paradigms, right? There's lots of user accounts. There's lots of moving parts that can be attacked. Let's take a look at the recent Komodo platform targeted attack. It used a module named Electron Native Notify. And the attack was, the goal was to introduce a new malicious dependency to run code on the Komodo user systems, stealing passphrases for cryptocoin wallets and to ultimately steal their cryptocoin. The timeline looked something like this, and I hope that this kind of brings together the things that an attacker would do to pull off something like this. So January 12th, the suspected attacker joins GitHub, and it appears that they forged their GitHub history to have private commits before that, because if you go look, they've got a badge that says they joined GitHub January 12th, but they've got previous commits before that timeline, which is confusing. So they're trying to bolster their legend there, build some trust. March 6th, Electron Native Notify was published. So this module came to be. It didn't do anything malicious. In fact, it was a useful module. It was useful in providing native notifications within an Electron application. March 14th, a week later, the GitHub user submitted a pull request to bring in the Electron Native Notify module into the Agama wallet, the Komodo Agama wallet. March 23rd, the attacker updated Electron Native Notify to include the malicious payload, right? So, and then on April 13th, the wallet was built and released, which contained that malicious code. Now, we detected it on June 3rd. So NPM detected the anomalous publish to Electron Native Notify, and we let Komodo know, and they were able to identify a way to gather. So they basically found a route on the exfiltration server of that particular malware authors where they were sending those seeds to for the wallet. They were able to find a way to gather all the seeds and then take that crypto coin before the attacker was able to, and then refund that to their users. So NPM was able to detect it because we flag on patterns in code, we flag on publications coming from things like anonymized networks, and also other things. So that was how we detected it, and how that kind of played out from timeline perspective. It's really focused around social engineering, right? They had to create a plausible situation to get their code to come into that wallet. And they weren't attacking the developers themselves as we've seen in the past. We've seen a lot of modules that have post-install scripts that are attacking the developers themselves or the installers of the module themselves. In this case, they were attacking the end users of that platform. So they were relying on building a legend, relying on good contributions, building trust, and then at a later moment in time, bringing in their malicious dependency. It used a network-based staged payload, meaning that once it only included a small downloader in the actual code to hopefully avoid, audit or something like that. And then when it was run on the end user system, then it would actually download its malicious payload and do whatever the attacker wanted. And then finally, it was detected by the NPM security team, which is something we're very proud of, because that's a shift in what we've seen historically, right? In the early days of the registry, we relied on, and we still do rely on, our 11 million users to bring us attention, right? But this time, we were able to catch it. We were able to notify the user. We were able to work with Heroku to take down the attacker's server. We were able to work with Komodo to protect those assets, and it was a pretty significant win for our team. So some malware trends that we've been seeing, going from 2017 to 2019, as can be expected, we have more people publishing. NPM is more popular than ever. So we're seeing, obviously, that's trending up, right? As it becomes a more popular attack vector, more things are being built with it. More important things are being built with Node. We're seeing people publishing more malware. But what we're seeing in 2019 is interesting. 2019 is the year we're seeing more financially motivated attacks. Early attacks in the early days of the registry were focused around, shenanigans, right? Like just deleting files and sort of, trying to steal some credentials, and those were just trying to, real basic attacks, kind of smash and grab style. And now we're seeing more financially motivated attacks, right? Like these attacks on fintech, cryptocurrency organizations, right? Where end users are the target, right? They want that crypto coin, that they're financially motivated, and they're trying hard to be patient, to be sneaky, to really have a well-planned out attack. This is different, or another example of this is the Copay wallet that was hacked earlier this year, which was through the ESLint scope module. If you want to look up that, that's on our blog, blog.npmjs.com. So let's talk about what are some of the things that NPM security is doing to protect our users. First of all, we have an NPM security team. We have a focused, funded, dedicated security team, and that's more than many other ecosystems can say, right? We have this dedicated team to field the reports from our users, to do independent research, and to be looking for these types of anomalies and try to get to them before they impact users, right? We're the front, from a malware perspective, we're the tip of the spear, right? We don't have, nobody's reporting these type of things elsewhere because we're the teams that deal with them and triage them and to get them out of the registry. We've set up automated token revocation, right? One of the best ways to compromise a lot of users is to take over an account of a popular package. And so protecting user accounts is an extremely important thing in the registry. So we're now unpublishing tokens from NPM packages if you've accidentally published them in them. And now, as of announced just a couple of days ago, through the GitHub token scanning partnership, we're now revoking tokens that are published in public GitHub commits, which is amazing because it happens more than you think it does. We all make mistakes, and what's amazing is it takes from time of publish to time that you have the email in your inbox saying that we revoked that token and protected your account for you is under 2 seconds. Pretty amazing. We're preventing credential stuffing attacks, basically password reuse from passwords that were from a known breach. We use the Have I Been Pwned project by Troy Hunt. It's an amazing project that provides password hashes from known breaches. And during sign-up or password change, we check that list, and if it happens to be in use, we don't let you use it. And it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but it goes a long way to protecting your account. We're also, we're collecting insights from 11 million developers. We have a report a vulnerability button on our website that leads to triage, maintainer communication, then advisories being issued, right? We're fielding all those reports, and anything that's not worthy of going to a maintainer, that's just it's not a report that's a vulnerability, the maintainer never sees it. So we're eliminating those false positives as a service to the ecosystem, and then, trying to connect researchers and maintainers to improve the quality of modules out there. Of course, one of our big initiatives that you're going to hear more about in the upcoming year is going to be our automated threat intelligence gathering. We're taking published packages and we're doing all kinds of interesting runtime static insight gathering that we can then feed into NPM Enterprise and help you make contextual decisions about whether to use modules or not, whether to let them into your ecosystem or not, should you block them or not. That's an amazing power that we're going to be bringing to NPM Enterprise and through sort of our threat intelligence gathering. So that's some of the things that NPM is up to, the NPM security team is up to for protecting our users. And so what are some things that you can do to protect yourself? Because we can only do so much. And as an organization that's using Node, that's using JavaScript, that's using NPM to build applications, there's certain things that you can do to sort of help protect yourself from attacks on dependencies. One of the first ones is to understand the consequences of semver. And this is a contract between you and your dependency tree. When you bring a module in, depending on how you sort of define in your dependency tree how you want to bring that in, whether you use a caret or a tilde, it changes the rules on what you allow to be brought in if you don't pin your dependencies. So if you use a caret, the major version must match, but any minor or patch versions can come in the next time you npm install it. So I like to think about this as, basically that, if you want trust to be a conscious decision, right? Like semver can be like a person sitting in a chair. You don't want to assume that someone has removed one of the legs since the last time you sat in it. You bring a version down, you look at it, it looks fine. Well, because of that contract, you're going to be bringing in a potentially new version, a potentially malicious version. So to kind of combat that a little bit, the NPM CLI can use a package called packagelock.json, and it pins your dependency tree so that the exact tree between when you installed it to subsequent installs is going to be identical. That file should be committed to your application repositories, and it can actually help your performance through your CI builds by doing so. Using NPM CI, you're going to get faster build times using that. So that's just one way, pinning your dependencies so that you don't have those dependencies shifting out from under you when you least expect it. So you want to be updating those dependencies with purpose. The other thing you do is enable and enforce two-factor authentication, right? If you do happen to leak your token, and we do happen to not reset it somehow, or your password is an easy-to-guess password somehow, two-factor auth adds that additional layer of protection that can lead to fewer compromised accounts. Some facts about 2FA within the NPM ecosystem: roughly 7% of all of our users have two-factor auth enabled. And over the last 30 days, 23.5% of all publishes in the last 30 days were protected by 2FA. So we're trending in the right direction. Those numbers are ever increasing, which is great, but it's something that you can do for your organization to help protect your accounts. Finally, you can audit your dependencies. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it is open source software, and you are ultimately responsible for what you require. And no tool or technology can replace the process that is security. So if you're dealing with a high-risk application, you do have to audit those dependencies that you're bringing in. Unfortunately, that can be a very time-intensive task. NPM Audit, of course, can help with that because it can tell you about known vulnerabilities, and NPM Audit Fix can help you fix those vulnerabilities, but that doesn't protect you against those ODAs, those things that you may need to audit for, that malware. And that's something that we're, through our sort of automated threat intelligence gathering, we're going to be enabling you to have the right context at the right time. And that's all going to come together in NPM Enterprise, right? The power of NPM with the security and the compliance you need, those compliance sort of controls to be able to block packages if they don't meet policy or if they exhibit behaviors that you don't feel is proper for your enterprise. It's going to be great capability. So that brings me to the end in a Q&A session. I'm sure you have questions, and I'll go away from this and see if we can find some of them. So let's see, we got a couple questions here. How often do these these attacks happen, and are they always targeted? You know, they aren't always targeted. Oftentimes it's just, you know, somebody being a prankster, you know, publishing a module that RMRFs to your files, and sometimes it's more targeted. We're trending towards the more targeted attacks, as I said, and they seem to be financially motivated. Although, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know, history is going to predict the future. Is there any way I can get a vulnerability report for my team or company? While you can use NPM Audit to you know, look at your particular projects and tell you if you have a you know, known vulnerabilities, we can also do that for organizations that you know, use the public registry. You can reach out to sales, and that's something that we can generate for you based on you know, your IP addresses, and that we can generate those type of reports. So reach out to our sales team and connect if you want to get that type of vulnerability report. I suspect those things are coming for our product line though. Let's see. Let's see if any more come in here. What expertise does NPM have internally to focus on security? So NPM security team, the baseline security team, was brought in through acquisition earlier in 2018. In fact, it was a company that I started, Lift Security. That particular company was a penetration testing company that focused on, you know, application security. We happen to have done all of the security testing for NPM since it became NPM Inc. And in fact, my first open source contribution 7 years ago was a security patch to the NPM registry, which I think is kind of fun to come full circle from an open source contribution to, you know, contributing directly as a team. The other thing is we started at Lyft the Node Security project, which was an initiative to become, you know, to have security become a core value within Node and JavaScript, and that's been fairly successful. So, you know, we've got a team of 4 people right now. So, you know, that's a small team, but through automation, through, you know, scaling our efforts, we're able to take a look at a lot of these things. And, you know, we've got people focused on triage and advisories and those kind of things, as well as internal research. It's pretty amazing. So let's see. If I get, I'm just reading these. So if I get a vulnerability report that has something alarming or showing higher critical vulnerabilities, how do I take action? So one of the ways you can run NPM Audit Fix, which if there's a fix available for any of those, it will update those to the appropriate version. That's not always the case. You know, we follow semver contracts, so it's possible that a fix won't be brought in. In that case, you may have to do some contribution to an open source project to get a dependency updated. You know, there's other tools from other vendors that sort of offer greater reporting, you know, than you know, NPM Audit or different reporting and auto updating of vulnerabilities. You know, NPM Audit provides that. You know, but those tools are quite expensive. You know, we're bringing those features to NPM Enterprise. You know, package filtering is coming. You know, compliance filtering will be coming, and there'll be more about that, I'm sure, announced soon. So those controls that we're bringing to NPM Enterprise are going to give you the control and visibility that you need. The best part about NPM Enterprise is you don't have to install, or if you're in NPM with NPM Audit, you don't have to, your developers don't have to do anything else. They're using the same tools they're familiar with day in and day out. They don't have to change their behavior, yet you can get better compliance and control over your security. So I think that's about all our questions, Danielle.
Great, thank you. As mentioned earlier, today's slides will be available on demand after the live session and accessible through the same link you're using now. We've also added some related material, which you will find under the attachment tabs at the bottom of your screen. Finally, if you like what you heard today, please tweet out your thoughts on today's webinar using hashtag #NPMFacts. Thank you for joining.